Good evening, Canby. And we are here on February 11th for a City Council work session. We're going to hear a presentation about the SDC update process, and I will turn this over to Don Hardy for introduction for Todd, and we'll get our presentation. I'm going to turn off my camera now.
Good evening, Council President Hensley and Council members. Todd Chase is going to be running us through the system development charge presentation tonight, with the hope that we can get to the back of the presentation, slide 27, on the items that are part of the methodology that will be moving forward for the system development charges. Thank you. And just a framework here about where we're at in the process. We have submitted a 90-day notice, which is required by the state for notifying the building community, the community in general. We sent out about 115 emails to various folks, so it's out there in terms of updating the system development charges. The 90-day process would take us to May 6th for the hearing, but within the 60 days from the notice, we have to do a methodology report, which is going to be March 6th, which is the reason we're here tonight, is to be able to get to the March 6th methodology report, to be able to put that on our website to release that. There's still some items here. We have covered a number of these things before, but there's still some items that we will be wanting your input on tonight. And then we will also have another work session next week, next Wednesday, specifically on the parks, the 20-year parks list, project list, because tonight we will not have enough time to go through that. And that's intended to prioritize the parks list, which is a robust list, and we asked Parks and Recreation Advisory Group for a robust list. It has a pretty robust price tag with the list, and part of that is the relationship between the list and the system development charges that would be anticipated, and then also realistically what projects could be built within the next 10 to 20 years. That's part of that discussion for next week. But we will touch on that briefly, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd to run us through the presentation. It will be a fairly rapid presentation. We're totally here, though, for commentary if you guys have questions while he's going through this. But we would like to get to that final slide on page 27, slide 27, to get your input on the methodology piece here tonight. So Todd Chase with FCS is going to lead us. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to video in for this presentation tonight. And as Don mentioned, we do have about 30 slides, so one per minute, could be 30 minutes. I'll try to go faster, but please stop if you have a burning question. We'll try to get through this tonight. I know there's another council meeting next week to continue conversation on this vein, so we'll get to all your questions, hopefully tonight, and if not tonight, next week too. Next slide, please, Don. And I know we've been working on this project for about a year now, and let's see, next slide, please. There we go. So we're going to cover the methodology. I think we've been through this before. There'd be a little bit of review there, but the new information is a summary of preliminary findings, and that includes both preliminary calculations of the potential new SDC rates for Canby. And we'll be talking about sanitary, sewer, and storm separately from parks and transportation. Each one deserves its own chapter and its own discussion. We'll focus on the SDC methodology tonight in terms of council direction as we move towards completing our public review draft SDC methodology report, which is due 60 days before the first public hearing, which is tentatively scheduled for May 6th this time. So that public review draft will be out in March. We're going to talk about long-range facility plans and other issues with regard to SDC implementation. So overview on the methodology. Next slide, please. As you might recall, SDCs are a one-time charge upon the time of building permit approval. You only get one chance to charge an SDC as a city, and that's when a developer comes in to improve some property. And typically, those SDCs are based on the impact that property improvement will have on the local system of city facilities and transportation, includes streets and pathways, parks and trails, wastewater and stormwater systems. And the revenue must be spent on a project that's included in the adopted capital plan or project list. You can change that project list every year if you like, but we need that capital project list to be adopted prior to the adoption of the SDC methodology. Some cities do that in the same meeting by opening up a hearing for the project list and then closing that hearing and voting on that list and then opening up the hearing on the SDC methodology. And some stagger the two, but they do have to happen concurrently. There are three types of SDCs in the methodology. You can see in the equation there's an improvement fee. There can be a reimbursement fee. We'll talk more about what that is for facilities that have already been built that are sized to accommodate future development in the city. And then there can be an admin fee, typically for updating the SDC methodology and just accounting for the expenditures. So we'll talk about each one of those fees. Next slide, please. There are two types, as I mentioned, of SDC projects. There's those in the reimbursement fee calculation, and those include examples that are just shown here just for illustrative purposes, where the city might have already invested, $7 million in a wastewater treatment plant capacity expansion a few years ago, and that's sized to handle development for the next 20 years. It's not a planned improvement, it's a completed improvement, but it still has remaining capacity. Another example would be if you built a dog park recently, then you could assume that that park would be there for future residents in the next 20 years to utilize as well as existing residents. And these projects are really designed to accommodate future growth. And so we can adjust the cost basis to account for the remaining capacity when we adopt the new methodology by, say, June or 2026. So some capacity of those facilities will have been used up, but much of the capacity will still remain. The improvement fee projects are based on plans that the city has to address, say, transportation improvements to accommodate future development, such as turn lanes or a roundabout on an existing intersection that's needed to accommodate trip growth based on future development, or plans to develop a new community park around a future neighborhood. And these are projects driven by the city's desire to maintain your policy level of service in the face of growth. And that way, your current level of service doesn't depreciate over time. So the SDC improvement fee calculations are adjusted based on the expansion in the capacity of the system. So that's kind of examples of the two. We'll talk about where those come into play in your different facility types. Next slide, please. Yeah, the charge basis for the SDCs are based on different types of demand. For wastewater, you currently are basing demand on equivalent residential units in gallons per day of usage of water and sewer. Stormwater tends to be based on changes in vehicle trips generated by new development because most of the stormwater systems are along streets. And the stormwater systems that are going to be built in the future are also going to be along streets. So we tend to base that on vehicle trips. Same with transportation, of course. Vehicle trips is the unit of demand there. And parks, we tend to base that on population by dwelling units. And with employees, we also have what's called equivalent residential units based on employee-generated demand for parks, typically afternoon hours of the city's park system. Next slide, please. So this is a graph that shows where you are currently. Your current existing SDCs in the city, including water, which you don't control, are about $26,000 per single family home. And you can see that's on the low end of the region right now. It's been about 10 years since the city did a wholesale revamp of your SDCs. And so most cities are now kind of towards the right side of the margin on this graph. The ones that we're talking about tonight, if we add them all together and you fully adopt them as they stand, would take you up to about 58,000 per dwelling unit, again, including water, which would be about on par with what West Lynn charges, a little bit above King City and Wilsonville's citywide rate, but below what we see in Hillsborough, West Hazel Village, and South Hillsborough and North Bethany, and Wilsonville's Frog Pond West area. So it kind of puts you in the ballpark of what we're seeing in a lot of the surrounding communities. We're going to talk tonight about phasing this in over time and fine-tuning the numbers based on your input. Next slide, please. So first, we'll talk about sanitary, sewer, and storm. These should be pretty, kind of innocuous, I guess, compared to the other ones. Next slide, please. Because what we have is a good master plan that Kern McLeod completed and updated last year. It includes new CIPs, capital facility plans, and SDC assumptions to come up with the new fees. And the new fees, in our work, we just adjusted them to 2026 dollars, which is a slight increase over what the Kern McLeod engineers were recommending. And the updated SDCs per unit actually is pretty close to what they're currently charging in the city of Canby. It would be about $4,400 for a single family home for sanitary, sewer, and storm combined, and about $3,500 per dwelling unit or apartment unit for multifamily, and about $1,644 for a mobile home. And that's about $269 higher than what you're currently charging today for single family homes, $216 higher than what you're charging for apartments, and about $101 higher than what you're charging for mobile homes. So they're, pretty slight increase over your current rates for sanitary, sewer, and storm. And there's a lot of detail that goes with this in their report. So we probably don't want to dive too deep into that unless you have a burning question about it. Transportation. Now this one could be a sizable jump because it's been about 12 or more years since you did your transportation SDCs. So we now have a transportation system plan that DKS is preparing for the city. It hasn't been adopted yet. It's planned to be adopted, I think, come May, by May, March or April even. And within that are some growth forecasts. Now, what we've done is worked with DKS to look at the projected growth over the next 20 years of the city of Canby. And some of this growth will occur outside your city limits currently, and even into the new UGB at some point. But the land that will be eventually annexed into the city is expected to accommodate a lot of jobs and a lot of dwelling units, and those will create a lot of trips. Once annexed, this planned growth over the next 20 years would result in about 7,100 net new peak hour vehicle trips throughout the city. And I think about half of those trips would be within the current city limits, and about half would be outside the city limits in the urban growth boundary that's being planned. We can convert those to person trips as opposed to vehicle trips by applying a multiplier about 1.5, 1.6, which is a standard of people per vehicle, and also the count for other non-vehicle trips such as transit and bicycle ped trips to come up with a total amount of person trip ends over the 20-year time period. So that 7,100 vehicle trips is an important number because that becomes the denominator in the SDC equation for transportation. And it also generates a gross share of 29%, roughly 30%, which basically says that if you're driving on Canby streets in year 2045, about 1 out of 3 vehicles would be net new to the city at that time. So about 1 out of 3 vehicles would be responsible for the cost of the improvements to the system at minimum. So remember that 29% number. We're going to come back to that. Next slide, please. As we looked at the capital facility plan that DKS generated, this is a fiscally constrained list, they say, still has 72 projects at a cost of about $196 million. Once we kind of take out kind of the non-eligible projects because they're kind of repaving or striping, they're not really adding capacity to the system as much as other projects where we're retrofitting to add bike lanes and sidewalks, or we're adding turn lanes or roundabouts. So we basically account for these projects in different bins. The safety improvements are not eligible, 0% eligible for SDCs. The minor facility retrofits that preserve level of service and extend the useful life of existing facilities are assumed to be about 29% SDC eligible. The major retrofits where we're adding right-of-way and widening certain streets are 75% eligible in our analysis. And the brand new roads that are required to address growth, most of these are on the perimeter of downtown or perimeter of the city, would be 100% eligible. And as we do that accounting, we're coming up with about 142 million of SDC eligible projects, which is 72% of the total cost. And now this detailed table shows you the 195 million total in the total price tag of all those 92 projects. We take out the non-capacity projects, we're left with about 142 million. We take out the current SDC fund balance for transportation, it's about 3.1 million. Leaves us with about $139 million of SDC cost basis plus the compliance cost of 2.5% for the administration of the program over 20 years. Leaves us a cost base of 142 million divided by 7,100 net new trips. Gives us a trip rate of about $20,000 per net new vehicle trip end in the city. And then when we look at that per residential unit, it would equate to about $18,800 for a detached home, where you're currently charging about $4,600. And about $10,200 per multifamily dwelling unit, whereas you're currently charging about $3,200. So those significant increases, we're recommending that you could phase those in over time. Some cities phase those in over 3 or 5 years. We're going to show you an example of phasing in over 3 years. And you can see this transportation rate of about 18,800 is still well below what we see in Wilsonville, just about 22,000, King City, 25,000, South Hillsborough, 37,000 per unit. So it's definitely on the lower end of the ballpark there, but it is a significant increase from what you're currently charging. Next slide, please. Parks and trails. This one would also be a wholesale rewrite of your SDCs, because it's been so long since you've updated it. We've been given kind of this draft project list by the Canby Parks Committee in the summer, and we're fine-tuning this list based on current appraisals the city has received over the last few months. And I think Don's going to hand out kind of a current list, which is a little bit different than this list, which shows about $178.1 million in total project cost with 182 acres. I think the price tag is actually going to go down a little bit because the appraised values have come down a bit than what we thought they would be on some of the projects, and the total acreages are a little bit lower as well. But we're going to ask at the February 18th meeting that you really ponder through this list, ask staff some questions, and try to come to that meeting with kind of your top 3 project priorities. Don't worry as much about the price tags for now, but think about the projects that you think the city would be kind of really, really proud of to build over the next 10 to 20 years. And we'll try to build as many of those as we can using STC funds. Next slide, please. When we do the STC analysis, we really focus on what's called level of service. And what you see in this table here is kind of the category of the various park types. We have community parks, we have neighborhood park and pocket parks, we have developed linear trails, and we have natural areas and open space, and some undeveloped parkland. Current inventory of the city is about 106.8 acres spread around those categories. So your current level of service is about 5.5 acres per 1,000 residents, and of which about 3.3 of those 5.5 are considered developed. The other spaces are natural areas and undeveloped parkland. So your current level of service for developed parks in the city is 3.3 acres. The city council adopted a policy level of service of 10 developed acres per 1,000. And it's going to take you a long time to get there, but with this draft project list, your developed level of service basically goes from 3.3 to 7.4 acres potentially per 1,000 residents over 20 years. You're getting close to 10. Your total parkland does go about 10, a little above 10, from 5.5 to 11.4 in year 20. And as we do the math, what we're finding is that the eligibility for each park project type averages at about 38% of the total cost. Some are higher than others, depending on kind of the current level of service and how much you're planning to add. But on average, we're covering about 38% of the cost using STCs. The rest, 62%, would have to come from other forms of funding. Some cities pass bonds, some create parks districts, some bump up their parks utility fees, big sales. But, those, it's difficult to build all these parks. I know it is, but you're going to need a variety of funding tools to do that. Next slide, please.
Todd, there's a question here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mayor. Todd, getting back to that talking point of park SDC eligibility per park master's plan, you can see the different percentages of SDC eligibility for each of the different segments. So community parks is only 31.7% eligible, whereas neighborhood parks and pocket parks are 88.5% eligible. Developed linear parks, trails is only 45%. This is important to staff because when we're trying to build parks, we want to have 100% SDC eligible in a perfect world. How can the council, and maybe you're getting to this, change those percentages if they wanted to? Is it by the project list or?
Yeah, the project list would certainly help, kind of diving deeper into that and trying to determine which parks are going to be more or less 100% eligible and which ones are we're going to kind of wait for a bond or something like that to get passed by voters. These percentages are intended to be kind of averages, and some parks can be higher and some can be lower, but based on the level of service for the citywide population, this is the fair share that developers would be eligible to pay for, or the nexus based on their demand, based on the total system in the city. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
There's another question, Todd.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. I do have a question in regards to the projects, and this kind of folds into what the city administrator was asking. And that is the park master plan, which was approved, yet you go back on the list.
Yeah, prior slide, please.
Yeah, if you go back on that list of projects, some of these are not addressed in the park master plan. So the park master plan would either have to change the park master plan or address the projects that are in the park master plan.
And I believe, Todd, that this project list adoption, you talked about that at the beginning of the presentation, that list could, without having to re-adopt the park master plan, we could adopt the project list as part of the SDC program. Is that correct?
Yeah, this would be an amendment to the parks master plan, basically, and adopted prior to the adoption of the SDC project list. The relative priorities shown there reflect what staff received from the Canby Parks Committee in July. And they were, of course, aware of the Parks Master Plan project list. And there are a number of projects that were identified in the Parks Master Plan that aren't reflected on this list. But they were trying to kind of get it down to, to a manageable list, I guess, for STC purposes. Because I think when I get to it, you'll see that based on this current list, you would definitely have the highest SDC, Parks SDC in Oregon, if you went with this list.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I attended that meeting, and I think that these projects definitely have to go back to the committee with that understanding, but also the understanding that we have to change the park master plan first to address those projects. We can't have two different lists going at the same time.
What I think Todd is saying is we could use the project list, if whatever the council decides that list is, and amend the parks master plan as a singular action. So the whole parks master plan does not need to get readopted. This list would end up replacing the list in the park master plan.
But we'd have to change the park master plan then.
I think the adoption could be through the same hearing as the SDC hearing. I believe that could be the same hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just adopting this list. It's really adopting this list as an amendment to the list in the park master plan.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's important to go back to the committee with that information, and also the understanding to the committee anyway, that whatever they decide when we're talking about new parks and 100% reimbursement on SDCs versus 31% reimbursement on SDCs, that might change their mind as far as what projects to consider.
And we are hoping to have you all input next Wednesday as a first cut to that. And we can definitely go back to the committee on this. I think there ultimately will be some decisions that council will have to make on which projects, what recommended projects are remaining on the list. We haven't quite got through all of this but there's the collection amount anticipated versus the amount of the entire project list, and those are quite a bit different in terms of the numbers as well. So there's a financial piece to this as well as to what theoretically could be collected over 20 years versus the entirety of the list. And that's what we're hoping to cover next Wednesday with you all as well. Okay. So, but I do agree with Councilor Davis. I do agree with what you're saying. I think, Todd, I was thinking when Randy mentioned that eligibility issue that we should provide a slide that shows what that percentage is on this table for those, because I think that would help in terms of sorting this out as well for the council to make your top 3 recommended projects. And then I think if you'd like us to, as a body, to go back to Parks and Rec, I think it needs some guidance from council to bring this down, because I'm not sure, you know, they may say, well, that's the list we told you we wanted, but I think in the end it needs some guidance to narrow this down.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I just don't want to blindside them
Yeah.
and say that the council made these decisions without having input from you.
No,
as well.
I understand completely, yeah.
Yes.
So I guess it sounds like that this list came up without that information of understanding the percentage of the SDCs. Okay.
Yeah.
And that there's some projects still on the master plan that aren't on here. So we can't just go back with just this list because we don't know what the percentages are on the other things that aren't on this list yet. So for us to be able to make that decision, we'd have to see what those percentages are on this list and the other things as well.
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. Once we know what we have a project list that's adopted, and we use that to create the SDCs. We don't use the SDCs to create the project list. I mean, that's the way it usually works. And the percentages are driven by the acreages and the levels of service provided to, you know, the city's residents based on the acreages of parks that are on the ground today and planned in the future. So once we really feel confident in the types of parks you want to build over the next, say, 10, 15 years, then we can fine tune the percentages. That's kind of unfortunately the way it needs to go.
Yes, sir.
I understand that, but I agree that the council, for us to make those decisions, need to, as we define this list, what is STC eligible, because that would definitely have input to me as far as which ones we move forward with and which ones we don't. And I understand your side of the world, but we're telling you what we need to make the decision.
Well, the next slide does show you the percentages on average of what is eligible based on that list.
And Todd, I think the conversation here is I think we need to add those percentages to each project so that when the council sees that next Wednesday, we're actually going to send it out in advance, but that will help inform them, I think, is what the conversation is on their recommendation.
What I'm saying is all the community parks on average are 32%. All the neighborhood parks on average are 89%. All the linear parks are 45%. All the natural areas are 39% on average. Some can be higher, some can be lower. But based on the acreages that we've been given, those are the averages.
And I think that's clear. I just think that just needs to be part of the discussion next week. I don't think there's a disagreement on that. I think it's more like the metrics of this that will weigh into council's formative decision on this. And I think also when we get to the collection amount, I think that's the next slide. We'll get into a bit more detail, but there's some other questions here. Yeah.
I just want to clarify too, the reality is we kind of have a time crunch on this in order to get, because we have to do this in a succession. And the fact that whatever we choose next week or whatever, we can still change that. It's not like that's locked in for the next 20 years. So we can get something going so we can get the plan submitted, but we can still adjust that later with some more information. So
Is that?
Yeah, I believe, I mean, I don't want to do this every year, but I believe we could adjust this list every year.
But I'm saying if we can't get it done in a week, then we
I
don't.
would
wanna
hope we
hold the whole
wouldn't
thing up.
adjust this every year.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we, looking at what we whittled this down to,
Yeah.
like, what are those high priority and medium priority ones that we at least get those called out, and then anything that might be, low, medium to low, we juggle in when we can or get part of the next conversation in 15 years.
Did want to hit on Council Waterman's point, though. I mean, this could extend the time frame overall for adoption. I mean, if we're going back to parks, I mean, we have no issue going back to Parks and Rec, but given the methodology, this is all kind of stacked here, but it may push this out a bit. But we clearly want your input next week so we can then go back to Parks and Rec, hopefully quickly, and then continue to develop the park methodology or the system development charge methodology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Todd, did you have anything more? Or should I advance the slide
No,
here?
I think that's, the STC methodology is really intended to just identify the highest maximum defensible rate for our, charges and transportation. And the project list on how you kind of spend those funds, those project lists can change and do change every year sometimes. So yeah, it's just intended to give you a start on the list, and then we can update it as time goes on. But I don't want to spend a lot because we're going to get into this slide next week, Don, but based on the 182 acres on that draft project list, the city would need to kind of figure out where that can be accommodated. And we're going to talk more about this next week, but in red here, down below, you can kind of follow this table. If we can put the big sports complex out in kind of the future employment areas, which would be a great amenity for businesses and residents, that would be a big chunk. And it doesn't have to be 62 acres. I think the current estimate that we put forth in Don's table that he's handed out today is about 32 acres. So we don't really know what that number is yet, but that's a big chunk. And then we already have 5.6 acres already of miscellaneous undeveloped parks the city owns. The former adult center the city's considering purchasing is actually about 2 acres, not 1. So that would lower it a bit. So that would get us down to about 110 acres of additional park needs. And then the city's thinking about or contemplating some acquisitions to Canby Utility, School District, some other right-of-way acquisitions. If all those things could happen and all that land is already inside the UGB, we would only need about 14 acres of additional parkland in the new urban growth boundary for the residential areas. If you don't acquire all these properties, of course, that number goes way up to about 113 acres of additional UGB expansion areas or parks around residential lands. So you can see how this all kind of plays into the conversation of urban growth boundary needs.
So Todd and Don, so looking at under Plan A, item A, calls out that there's the 1 acre of the former adult center. So that's dirt that we don't own. So that should not be factored into that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and we can, I think we can take that out if.
I mean, it's minuscule, but it's
I guess
detailed piece.
the land is owned by the school, but the building is owned by us, by the city, is that?
Correct.
Okay. Todd, I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I mean, can that be removed?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I know it's in the master plan or the long range plan list of projects.
Okay.
But we can put it down here.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if the school district, wants to have conversation about that itty bitty piece of land, for the city, I think we could have that conversation, right, Randy?
Any piece of land with a high appraisal. Yeah. So none of those are definite right now. So we might need to see how much acreage we could put around some of the residential areas for parks. And as you do that urban planning, Don, and that'll kind of come in from a different direction.
And there's another question here as well. Yeah.
Go ahead, Counselor Davis, and then Counselor Patton.
Okay, thank you. So are you saying then, under Plan A, so I understand this, that you want to take out the 62.5 acres for future sports complex?
One idea is that, with the Canby economic opportunity analysis, we identified the need for 444 net total acres for employment land. The gross amount of land would be well above that, I'm sure. And this sports complex, however big it is, whether it's 30 or 60 acres, could potentially be accommodated around that future employment area. It's one option. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot of input on that as Don kind of works through the urban growth planning study. But that's one way. And it was, by the way, one of the objectives, the council objectives of the economic opportunity analysis was to build this kind of sports and recreation complex. And we don't even know if it's going to be publicly owned. It could be run by a nonprofit or a for-profit entity.
Sure. Well, I've heard different numbers. As we've gone through this process, I've heard 41 acres. And now we're up to 62.5 acres. So I'd like those numbers checked because the needle keeps moving in regards to the amount of acres that we need for that. Originally, when we were talking before, it was around 40 acres or 41 acres for a sports complex. And so I'm not quite sure where the 62.5 comes in.
And just to the point here on the economic opportunity analysis, that was the maximum amount of land that could be set aside for that. Not that that was the acreage, but that was in the economic opportunity analysis, it's the maximum amount. That's another item for next week as well, as to we're not giving that number to you all as necessarily what that number should be, that we're just identifying that that could be the maximum based on the economic opportunity analysis in the employment, future employment area.
Okay.
And this is a bit more for next week as well. We could, and I was going to see if I could just summarize this and we can talk about this next week because we got some other slides. But the gist of this slide here, I think, is twofold. One is the level of service we're identifying here is 11.4 acres per thousand. Currently, the adopted amount is 10 acres per thousand. That has an influence on how much acreage is required overall. Secondly, there's an interrelationship between the decisions we make on the system development charges and what we're dealing with in terms of what's included in that and what we're going to look at as our urban growth boundary need for urban park space for expansion. There's a relationship there between those two. And Todd is correct. That would be looked at during conceptual planning for the urban growth boundary expansion. We're starting that process this week with ODOT through concept planning, and that would be looking at land and what potentially there might be for park areas within the urban expansion. Okay. There's a lot here. We could probably spend about 30 minutes on just this slide, but I was hoping we could move that into conversation for next week. But those are the key issues that we would want to talk about next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Patton?
Yeah, so something I will just throw out is that, like the adult center, the land the pool is under is not ours as well. And so if that is figured in any calculations, that should probably be taken out as well.
So noted.
Yeah, next slide, please. More on that later.
That's like 3 acres, Todd. And we can, it's similar to the adult center. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and advance this. Go ahead, Todd. Yeah.
Yeah, like the prior methodology for parks, SDCs for the city, which I personally got to work on 10 years ago or so. The City of Canby does allocate some of the parks costs to non-residential land uses, such as businesses, industrial properties, and potential hotels. And what we've come up with is by looking at the hours of service that are available between residents and workers who work inside the city but live outside the city. We've concluded that the availability of park hours ranges, it's kind of distributed about 82% to residential and almost 18% to non-res, similar to what we did in the prior methodology. Next slide, please. This slide shows you kind of what, if you do want to include a parks reimbursement fee, how we would calculate that. We've been talking about the improvements, future improvements, but the city is actually, you've already invested quite a bit in parks over the last, say, 5 years, close to about $3.5 million. And when we back out the demand that has occurred over time, the remaining capacity that's left on those recent facilities that have been built equates to about 3.4 million is our estimate. About 82% would be allocated to residential, about 18% would be allocated to non-res. So the residential, what this would do is, when we look at the number of residential units projected over the next 20 years, this would equate to about $1,200 per average dwelling unit for the reimbursement fee portion of the parks SDC calculation. So this would be different than the improvement fee calculation, which is on the next slide. So the improvement fee calculation would be based on the park project list, take out the non-eligible pieces based on the levels of service that we calculated, and that would give us an adjusted cost basis after we take out the fund balance of $1.1 million, of about $61 million for STC improvements for parks. That's the amount kind of that we're saying could be paid for using SDCs, 61 million. And then we divvy that up. When we add the reimbursement component, you can see to come up with a total cost basis of $66 million. We allocate that between res and non-res, and we divide that by units or jobs. And so this would equate to about $23,800 per dwelling unit on average, and about $1,700 per job, which we would then convert to square feet for buildings. We did some back of the envelope analysis to take out the $50 million for the sports facility building. We still bought the land, and took out one of the lower priority projects, the Ivy Street Bridge, Ped Bridge, and that backed our total eligible costs down, and it took our rate from $23,800 to $16,200 per dwelling unit. So you can see that those are the kind of things I want to talk with you more about next week as we fine tune the project list, how that influences the rate. The new rate under this current calc of $23,800 per home would be higher than the highest we've seen in Oregon, which is Lake Oswego, $17,149, and Wilsonville is $14,000. So ideally, you'd get closer to those numbers as we fine tune the project list.
Next slide, Todd.
Sure.
Okay.
And then we took the non-residential fee as a fee per job, and then we've made some assumptions about jobs per 1,000 square feet to come up with what this parks fee could be per square foot of floor area added of certain buildings based on the type of building proposed in the city. So you can see industrial will be about $2 a square foot, retail about $2.47, office about $4.80, and lodging about $1.15. And that's what a lot of cities do now. They charge based on square feet.
So Todd, I'm going to move this up because we're getting close to the hour
Okay.
here. So summary of draft
Summary.
SDCs. Yeah.
So for residential, we talked at the last, I guess it was last year, about scaling the fees as opposed to just one fee for all home sizes. And we're showing you, if you had 5 types of home sizes, 5 categories, one up to 500 square feet, these would primarily be accessory dwelling units. One from 500 to 1,000 square feet, these would primarily be apartments or small condos. One for 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, these would primarily be cottage homes, manufactured homes. And then the standard dwelling units would come in about 1,500 to 2,000. And then the larger estate homes would be over 2,000. And the fees that would result based on what we have before you today would range from about 27,000 to 58,000 per dwelling unit, depending on the home size. And, so having 5 bins of home types would simplify the work for administration, but it would also create a little more equity for folks that want to build smaller units, more affordable units. Of course, you could, if it's deed restricted housing, you could further reduce the fee or even waive the fees, but this would help promote some equity. And finally, I think we have,
Sorry.
the phase-in slide, Don, which was showing if you did want to phase in the parks and transportation over 3 years, how that would work out. And this is what a lot of cities do. Yeah. Next slide. There you go. So your current rate is about $16,500 per dwelling unit, excluding water. And then if you phase in, so year 1, we're going to get to 50% of our max for transportation and parks. That would take us up to about $32,000 per average single-family home, excluding water. And then year 2, we'd go up to 75% of the max, and year 3 would be at 100% of the max. And some phase this in over 5 years, some phase it in quicker, but this is one way to kind of alleviate the burden on developers who are already running pro formas on subdivisions. And now the next steps. So the key discussion items we hope from council tonight, we hope that to get your input on the idea of scaling the SDCs by home size with 5 cohorts for housing types. We are proposing one citywide STC district rate. It is possible that when you do an urban growth boundary expansion area and designate that, we could come back with an STC overlay for that area if additional projects are required to serve that area. And that's what Tigard and Beaverton and Hillsborough and Wilsonville do. So one citywide STC rate is what we're proposing. Phase in the STC for transportation and parks over 3 years. You're going to talk more about STC waivers or discounts for deed restricted affordable housing in the future. We don't have to deal with that tonight, but it is something that's, I know the council is going to be working on. And then the long range project lists, have been worked over for transportation and sewer and storm quite a bit. We recognize the parks project list will need to be refined, and we're going to start that conversation next week. And any other issues you want to bring up. But these are the key items for confirmation tonight. And then next steps, and come back to that prior slide, Don. But the next steps are the city issued the 90-day SDC notice on January 29th. We have another council work session next week, February 18th. The first adoption hearing for SDCs and the project lists would be May 6th, potentially. And the draft SDC methodology report needs to be issued by March 6th. We'll get input from stakeholders right up into the final hearing. That input can be used to fine tune the project list and the final calcs right up to the final adoption. And the new charges can go into effect as soon as the new methodology report is adopted. We're kind of thinking July 1st, but it could be sooner. So there we go.
So just back on slide 27, and we can continue this conversation next week, but we're hoping that we get confirmation from you all that having the scaled residential home size would be something that we could include in the methodology. One SDC district, which is appropriate, I think, for the size of Canby instead of having multiple. It's easier to implement that as well. And then the phase in, which you all we can speak about this next week, but the phase in. And then I think the other piece of this is as the numbers get adjusted, we'll have more information, but it's a lot to take in. I mean, these are big jumps, and it's important to have this done in a way that you're feeling comfortable with the information.
Yeah, there's a lot here, Don. So, I mean, it's a staggering increase, for sure. So can you go back to the slide of with the 5 cohorts broken out?
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of focus is in this particular slide and maybe in a lot of the document here was the focus on SDC calculations on housing, single family homes, right? 83% versus 17% on businesses, obviously. And it seems like, and Todd may need to revisit, maybe not tonight, but next week's meeting about what drives that calculation. Because I think I understood it to be based on the amount of people working in Canby versus living in Canby, that dictates how SDCs are broken out between residential homes and what businesses would necessarily take on. Right? In a nutshell, am I close to that explanation?
Todd, is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. It's based on the hours the parks are available to residents versus non-resident workers.
Okay, and that's strictly just the parks SDC, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, which makes sense because, I mean, I know the argument has been made that some of the businesses think that why should they be paying more into a park SDC when, you know, they don't live here, but yet, you know, that's one or the other. So a couple of things I think that need to be thought about here for the council and even for, I mean, all of us in this conversation. So when we look at the SDCs and how they enable for growth for parks, transportation, sewer, and stormwater, I think we need to also keep in mind that this is increasing the city's operating costs. That's more for us that we've got to take care of as we grow. So we're going to add more parks, we're going to add more roads, et cetera. SDCs do not cover operating costs. And so I guess my question, and I'm glad our finance director is here, is when we look at that, will our tax revenue of added growth that we're projecting cover the increase in the operating costs? 3% property tax increases each year already creates a bit of a constraint in that regard. So I worry about that aspect. And again, whether we're talking about SDCs in general, it's just growth in general. So it's not necessarily picking on SDCs. Do we have anything out there regarding the impact on the development of housing? Like, will we have communities, when we look at it, this is something for the council to think about, do we want to be that far up the SDC chain? Do we want to be the ones setting the bar as a community for SDCs and development? So the counter pendulum to that, to me, the countermeasure is, what is that going to look like in terms of housing development, right? We've got a housing strategy that we want to achieve. And our biggest piece that we talk about as a group, as a council, and we have for a number of years, and it's not just Canby, it's just about every city, I think, across the Willamette Valley, and we'll say even the state, is that middle housing bandwidth. So I like the cohort idea, because it seems like it's not, sorry, I need glasses these days. It's not $58,000 across the board, but there is a breakdown where it's based on square footage, which I do like. It's still a huge hit when I look at, if we're trying to meet that middle housing ground, which to me is that 1,000 to, so cohort 3 and 4, that we're already blowing ourselves out of the water in terms of housing costs. And I know not all of that is SDC charges, but that's, if I'm a developer, I mean, there you go. We talk about what it costs a developer just to stick the shovel, before they even stick the shovel in the ground. I mean, I'll go back to, in Council President Hensley and I've heard this conversation with former Senator Alan Olson, who was a builder. Like, I mean, at the time, this was, Council President Hensley was just like 7 years ago. He, his comment was like, I'm $150,000 into the project and I haven't even stuck a shovel in the ground. So that was then, this is now, what is a builder looking at before they even turn dirt? So that's a concern for me, just in general, right? And so one of my questions, and Dawn, and I think you and I have talked about this in terms of ADUs, we've had how many ADUs built in our community?
Very, very few.
Very few, right?
I mean,
because
maybe,
they've got to shell out 25 grand in it, SDCs, and that's more than what it costs to build the ADU, right? So, and again, strategy for this council and future councils is, do we want ADUs as a growth option? So is this hydraulic in terms of these cohorts, Don, in terms of, I mean, if we want to see the development of cohort sizes 3 and 4, and maybe even 1 through 4, does 5 become a bigger chunk? Or do we add a 6? Or do we look at it, again, this is first night having this conversation. These are just things that are rattling around in the mayor's head this evening on this. So again, I'm not looking for answers from you and Todd or even the rest of the council tonight. I just think it's good food for thought in that regards.
Great commentary, and I think that kind of the price point in some ways is really ultimately up to the council as well. So like we have the demand side, which transportation is a little more quantitative. Parks is a little more subjective in some ways, perhaps. It's quality kind of based. Roads are based on level of service and safety.
Yep.
Parks there's a different measure to that. And so as we talk next week, I think these giant numbers hopefully might come down as the numbers for the park system come down, but still it's a ginormous number even without parks at all in terms of a jump. And that's what happens in some ways when 15 years go by since we've done this last time. And so that's, it's a big jump. But I think in the end game, though, council also has a directive to identify, you're getting to sensitivity analysis pieces of this about where we think we should land on this. And then that could also be part of this process as well. That this doesn't have to be our conversation necessarily saying I mean, we're providing options, but in the end, you can give us direction to identify where you would like to land in that spectrum of options, and we could work that backwards.
Well, and again, jumping in the Wayback Machine too, Don, and the council, like when we talked about the goal being 10 acres per thousand, right? And that number's fluctuated, and there was conversation like, well, did that include school, school parkland? Yes, no, I mean, that's gone back and forth, but let's just say it is all on us. And I know that when we look at some of the park development that we've done, some of that is just green space. It's nothing that we have to necessarily maintain, but it's still factored in as parkland, right? And so I think as we look at that, long-term operational number for us going forward is how much of that is, I guess, active use parkland versus passive parkland. That makes.
It totally makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, you're dead on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comments? Yes, Councilor Stearns.
Can these SDCs be indexed for inflation? It seems like
They actually are, and they go up every year based on inflation. There's an index. So regardless of what happens with this increase, every year
so for the last 15 years ago when this was redone, they've gone up via inflation to 26,000, and now we're proposing a 125% increase. That seems a little bit. It's going to take a little bit to sell me on a 125% increase. I just did a calculator on my phone on that.
There's an engineering index that all jurisdictions use each year as inflationary. It's what they use. It has not kept up. I mean, I know the math may seem strange, but you just look at the spectrum of where Canby is, and you look at the other jurisdictions. It's, we've fallen behind because we've not upgraded our cost index. Just looking at transportation costs back in 2009, 2010 on transportation compared to 2026 is dramatic. I mean, just in the last 4 years, it's been dramatic. And so it's a big sweep. And I don't disagree, but there's a percentage increase that they go up by every year, but it does not account for that percentage increase. Doesn't carry the day in terms of like bringing those up to what the costs are.
Okay, because I just think we need to think really carefully. I was just at a meeting last night with the utility board that says they're going to up the cost of the new plant, maybe, not officially, by $100 million more than previously said, and we said the rates increase that they were proposing. Can be very soon be a very, very expensive place to be in. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that your growth ain't going to happen if it gets that expensive.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, I think a lot of that, these numbers, when we talk about the wastewater or the, water treatment plant, these aspects, it's all based on what the growth is. So if the growth is not there, then the SDC revenue, we're not building, and so that SDC revenue is not there either, right? So that's that weighted scale piece of what we're looking at.
Yeah. Well,
we could very well price ourselves out of development. I don't know, and that's the piece where I don't know. Like if we take an SDC level like this, does that mean that all that's being built are homes that are above the 2,500 square foot mark and start at $550,000 to $600,000?
Because you look at that, just the numbers, you're going to be on the cost per square foot. It goes down the greater the house size is when it comes to these fees. It's just doing my own mental math on this. And I don't know, I know there's time for this meeting to probably over, but will we have time to actually engage in conversations like next week or?
Oh, yeah, I think it's.
We can continue that discussion. Yeah. There is a lot to absorb here, and we obviously, we will take the time that's needed to get through this. We've been given a directive to push this thing through, and that's, as a council goal, but it's really your prerogative on where we go with all this.
No, and this is the homework that we needed to do. Last question, Councilor Patton, and then we'll need to move into our council meeting this evening. Councilor Patton?
Yeah, so I guess for me, one of the things I would say is that this whole thing about the cost of housing and stuff, one of the reasons, this is my opinion, one of them. One of the reasons we are in the situation we are in is because none of this stuff was adjusted over time. And so the reason we're looking at these huge increases is because there was no changes made over that period of time. So the goal would be to ensure that in the future, these things are adjusted in a reasonable time so we don't have these huge spikes in these charges. And I've heard for years that we don't want to price ourselves out of the market, yet we still have a ton of people building homes in this city. So I don't see a huge problem at this point in time for people who want to build 2,500 square foot homes that are bringing cash into the city. Now, I believe in an earlier conversation, we had said that there are ways of adopting these fees and stuff so that if people are actually wanting to build multifamily homes, affordable housing and stuff, they can actually get discounts and stuff on these SDCs to make it more feasible to do that. And I think incentivizing builders to come in and build those units makes sense. But if they want to come in and build these gigantic homes that take up all this land, then I don't see why these people shouldn't be paying for the services. So that's just my opinion on that. I'm sure some people's hair is on fire after saying that, but it is what it is. The other thing I want to say is that you're talking about us having, sorry, I am getting over the flu. You were saying something about we're going to have another meeting next week. Is the slide deck for that meeting of a similar size to the slide deck to this one?
It will be shorter is the hope. I mean, this was a lot to take in, and I know it's a lot of slides. Yeah.
So here's the deal.
Yeah.
I am curious as to when people are going to come to the realization that this council is unable to swallow this much information in an hour. That's the whole reason why we have the off Wednesday work sessions. That's why we started it, was so these conversations, we would have 2 hours to actually tackle this and not be rushed through it. So I'm going to encourage you folks, even though the next meeting is actually one of our normal city council meetings, you have got to schedule in a reasonable amount of time for us to get our thoughts out so that way we can all be heard and go forward from there.
And Councilor Patton, I totally agree with you in that statement. And that is, I'm going to own that because I control the agenda. The piece that put us into needing to do a council meeting this evening was regarding the public hearing on there regarding the noise variance, because there's a time limit on that. And that's why this got truncated because of that aspect. Going forward, this meeting, this particular day and time, it absolutely needs to be considered just for work sessions and not an additional council meeting. So that going forward, that I own that for tonight. But going forward, that will not be the case.
Well, and that's all well and good, but if that's the case, then what should have happened was 2 hours or an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes should have been given to this meeting, and then the city council meeting started after that.
Well, and I mean, we just posted it for 7 o'clock. Doesn't mean we need to start at 7 o'clock. We can control that as well. I mean, if there's more to have dialogue on this, then, we can do that.
We'll build in more time next week.
Okay. Maybe you and I can connect tomorrow on the agenda I know a preliminary went out.
Yeah.
The focus next week is really on parks, but yeah, it's so noted. So.
No, it's okay. Council President Hensley, and then we gotta, I guess, move on.
Well, I just wanted to address Councilor Patton's concern. If he has more that he wants to talk about, we announced, or we noticed for the council meeting to be at 7. That just means we can't start it before 7. So if he has more he wants to flesh out, let's get it done.
No, concur. I mean, is there more that you guys, again, knowing my council, we just got, taken out to the woodshed on SDCs. And this group generally does, when that occurs, likes to noodle before they get into much deep dive conversation and reflection, which is fine. And that we have now a week to do that, or we can do that now. Counselor Patton.
Yeah, so I would say if that's the case, that I strongly agree that these SDCs need to be phased in over a period of time. In my opinion, those SDCs that are close to what they currently are could probably be done in a 1 year, like over 1 or 2 years. But for the great big ones, I think it would be more than reasonable to do a 5 to 6 year phase in. And that would give us time to sort of track how that SDC funding is coming in, because a lot of these models say this is what it's going to look like and this is how much is going to come in. But then once we actually start collecting the money, sometimes we realize that actually we're getting less or we're getting more where we're tracking. And so by doing it in a phased process over that time, it would give us the opportunity to make those adjustments as we went along. So if we found that we were actually increasing too much or there was too much coming in, I hate to even say that, but let's say it's an absorbent amount and it makes us blush that that's how much money is coming in, then it would give us an opportunity to adjust those future increases so that way we're making things relatively fair and equitable. And I would also, and I guess I saw some heads nodding, but correct me if I'm wrong, back to my question about one of the ways that we help sort of stimulate the growth of those affordable housing units or multi-housing units is to incentivize builders to build those units to get certain SDC waivers or reductions in the SDC's amount. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correct from future or past meetings? Pardon me.
Councilor Patton, so there's a housing production strategy that's been adopted by council. Those are strategies. Those strategies do talk about qualified affordable housing and having waivers for them. However, that's just the strategy. Each of those strategies is going to have to come before the council to be approved in terms of the details of that. But that did pass through Department of Land Conservation and Development as what we are planning to do over the next 4 years. That's a bit separated. I mean, but they're intertwined, but that's separated. We can separate those out, and we're intending to do that with our code update, is to address those issues separately from the SDC update. But if that's the desire of the council to weave those into this, we're also open to that as well. That conversation, though, really was more intended to be like with the code update, we'd be addressing that more holistically on what those qualified affordable housing units are and the parameters around those in more detail through a council discussion and ordinance process. But you're correct. That was something the council did give the approval for the strategies, but those, I guess those could also at the same time, at the council's directive, could be woven into this SDC update, and we could just adopt that as part of this process. It's up to the council to decide what to do on that.
Okay, so it sounds like the answer is that yes, we do have the ability to do those.
You absolutely
to cut the pie that in smaller pieces to help stimulate that growth.
I was just trying to give our staff thought process on that.
I know.
Yeah.
No problem. I'm on like a gallon of cough syrup, so just bear with me. So another question that I had is, I agree with Councilor Waterman that when we see, I'm all for the Parks Advisory Board taking a look at the sort of the list of projects that are here and how it marries in with the projects list that was part of the parks master plan. But I really would like to see, I am also advocating to see even some sort of percentages of what of those can be like assigned to each one of those park projects of what could be covered under the SDCs, even if it's saying that, granted, it can be said, well, this falls in this category, that falls in that category. I'm going to be lazy in saying that it would be nice to just see the percentage right there as we're looking at the list, rather than having to like cross-reference back to another chart to say that this is what that part falls under and this is what that amount is.
We intend to show that to the council in advance and during the meeting. Todd, we just talked about that briefly earlier. I think Todd gave the head nod to say, yeah, we'll add that percentage to the columns.
Okay. And I think for me, at this point in time, those were the things that kind of stuck out to me.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Patton. Councilor Davis.
Yeah, Mayor, we noticed the council meeting for 7 o'clock, and we've got people out in the lobby waiting. So I'd recommend we end this meeting and continue this discussion at a later date.
Okay, appreciate that. Is yours a comment now, or can I wait till next week?
Well, just a comment now, but real quick, can we actually schedule time to discuss it next week? Because I know the presentation is very long and everything, but it sort of annoys me when we have a presentation that doesn't give any time for discussion afterwards, so.
Duly noted, and City Administrator Ely and I will look at the agenda next week and make sure that that space is put in there. Okay.
Thank you.
Todd, Don, thank you. It's a heavy lift, and we appreciate it, so thank you. We will adjourn or end the work session here and get ready for our city council meeting. Councilors here, anyone need a break before we roll into it? No? Okay, we'll get started here shortly. Thank you. Good evening, Canby. Welcome to our city council meeting. I apologize for the late start. This is not a usual, it was a special called meeting this evening for us. So appreciate your patience. We had a very detailed and heavy conversation, work session here this evening about system development charges. So I won't rehash much of that now, so you can go back and watch the tape if you wish, or join us next week when we will talk more about that. So if you please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. For tonight's invocation, I just ask for a moment of silence for our first responders, our police, our fire, our paramedics, and our military personnel around the world. Great, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we have a couple of things this evening. So we'll move into roll call vote. Ms. Teresa?
Councilor Patton?
Present online.
Council President Hensley?
Present on Zoom.
Councilor Maldonado?
And nothing was reached out to me about him not being here this evening either.
He told me he didn't know that we had a meeting tonight.
Mayor Hodson?
Here.
Councilor Davis?
Here.
Councilor Stearns?
Here.
Councilor Waterman?
Present.
Great, thank you. Randy, do we have staff introductions this evening?
Mr. Mayor, we do not.
Okay.
We do.
Oh, according to our HR manager, we do.
Okay, I didn't see it on the agenda. Come on up. Huh? We thought it was next week. Our bad. Welcome.
Introduce you guys to Jacob Frostick at the Swim Center. He's our new program coordinator.
Welcome, sir.
Comes from a pretty storied history in aquatics. He's worked in both the private and public side, including most recently at the Multnomah Athletic Club and Hawthorne Farms. And we're super excited to have him. We have lessons starting next week, so it'll be trial by fire.
Good.
Leave it to you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Mentioned, I'm Jake Frostick. I'm coming on as the program coordinator for the Swim Center. I've had over a decade of experience in aquatics, have a background in Red Cross training, primarily with lifeguarding, teaching CPR first aid classes, overseeing swim programs. My primary duties will be the overseeing of our swim program, so I'm just very excited to be coming on to you guys and getting to work with the city, and especially focusing on the quality of our swim lessons and bringing the overall safety for the Swim Center. So thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the city.
You're welcome.
See ya.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is an opportunity for citizen input and public comment. It's an opportunity to address the council on non-agenda items. I do have, I almost said yellow card again. We have one white card, but that's for our public hearing this evening. So I don't think we have anyone online tonight. So, okay, we will move on. Item 5 this evening, ordinances and resolution. The first one is ordinance number 1662, an ordinance authorizing the interim city administrator to execute a contract with Canby Excavating Incorporated in the amount of $3,479,492 for the South Walnut Street Extension Project and declaring an emergency to a second reading on February 18th, 2026. Mr. Ely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to call a few people up to the podium. Kurt McLeod is here. Our project manager for this project, Neil, is here, and Spencer, Public Works, is here. So we've got a good team working on this. You will note that we did elect to invoke the declare an emergency clause. I would really like to keep this project moving forward. There's a lot of moving parts, so I know that's at your discretion. So after you hear our presentation, feel free. I know you use that very rarely, so it wasn't taken lightly that we put that on there.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Kurt.
Well, we're bringing you a contract proposal tonight. We had 17 bids, so very competitive. Prices range from $3.5 million to $7.1 million.
The estimate was embarrassingly high at 6.8, but we're paying less today than we paid 2 years ago for things. So Canby Excavating is well-known in Canby. They've done a good job for us for many years. So we're asking for council approval to award a contract for I think it's 3.479 million.
And remind me, Kurt, what this portion of the project is to do what?
We have 3 phases. This is the second phase. This builds from the end of the curb returns at 99E, so it doesn't touch 99E, and it builds all the way up to First Avenue and the curb returns. So the complete project from the end of the curb returns at the highway all the way to First Avenue.
Okay.
So there's just a lot of moving parts on this project. So we're still working to get ODOT approval on the 3rd phase, and that's the actual signal and the realignment of lanes on Highway 99E. And in fact, they've made a condition of even this project. They want us to have the ODOT approval before the county wants us to give us a permit on this. But we're pushing to make all these things come together at the same time.
No, and I appreciate that, and that was my question for you, was going to be where we were at with, I know the signaling, and ODOT has come back a couple of different times with a new list of demands and wanting more ransom money for the project, and so.
They haven't billed us yet, but they will.
No, for sure, okay.
We're waiting for the 5th review back, and I imagine they will have some comments, but hopefully those can be resolved quickly. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Questions? Yes, Councilor Davis.
Have we seen the actual design for what this road's going to look like?
Well, certainly, yeah. We have, with the highway's got I don't know if you've seen them. You know, we've provided them to Public Works. So we have 50 sheets of plans for the street improvement, and then we have another maybe 40 sheets for the signal itself. Then there was another 10 or 12 sheets for the sewer crossing, so the 3 phases that we have. So yeah, everything has been designed for a long time. For this full year it's been designed. ODOT has us tweak it, so we keep having to tweak it and change things. Yeah, if you want to see it, I can certainly email you a PDF set. You can see that. It's very.
That would be helpful. I'm interested as to whether or not there's any center dividers, or is it wide open road?
It's wide open road.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So it's dual left turn lanes as Walnut Street approaches 99E. There's a right turn lane, dual left turn lanes, and a single southbound lane.
Okay, thank you.
Randy, since that's come up, and I know the initial, it sounds like this has gone through a couple of different reiterations since we first dreamed of this punch through.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible maybe for one of our meetings in March to get, I guess, the most current kind of drawing or look at it for us to talk about, or at least see it?
Yep.
I don't know if
It'd be helpful.
Kurt needs to be here for that, but just to kind of, just put some eyes on it and maybe, you know,
That'd be nice.
have the project manager go through it for us, just kind of get a feel for it, because I know we got
Big road.
we got boring coming up, we've got all sorts of stuff for this project, and so it'd be good to just have that visual.
Certainly.
Does that work?
Yeah, you bet.
Appreciate that, thanks. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Patton, Council President Hensley, anything? I'm not seeing any hands.
I'm good.
I do have one. I just want to confirm the stoplight that's going to be at this intersection will be owned by ODOT, correct? It's not going to be a city stoplight, right?
No, I think the city is going to be responsible for operation and maintenance. So I don't know who owns it. I think the city is going to, I guess the essence of that, the city is going to be responsible for all operation and maintenance. So we will end up going under contract, probably with Clackamas County, I would expect, for the operation and maintenance of that signal. It will not, I don't believe it'll be an ODOT signal.
I can check on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a new wrinkle.
Oh, really? Interesting, because I know that, I believe that all the other, because we've had this conversation about some of the other stoplights, and if memory serves me correctly, all the ones that are currently on 99E are all ODOT ones, and the only one that we actually own is the one there at the intersection for the Fred Meyer on Redwood Street. So I would be curious about that, because I've been telling people that this is an ODOT stoplight and not a City of Canby stoplight. So I would like to make sure I'm not lying to people.
Yeah, let's find
That
out.
was my understanding too.
The signal at 13th and Ivy is also a City of Canby signal.
Right.
Oh, see, I'm learning something new tonight.
13
Mr.
in
Mayor, are
Ivy
we
or 13
sure
in
about
Township?
that?
13th and Ivy. So now the new one at Ivy and Township. Yep.
No.
What now?
No, we don't have 13.
Oh, I thought we contracted with the county to maintain 13th.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so no.
We'll verify all that. Let's figure that out.
Okay, so we'll verify.
Thank you.
The new light there at Sequoia or Walnut and 99. Okay. Council President Hensley?
Yes, I want to go back just a quick second to 13th and Ivy. It was my understanding in our conversations at the Traffic Safety Commission that they wanted to put a dedicated left turn lane there, and the reasoning for it not happening yet was they were waiting for the Ivy to come into our possession. It's a county light, not ours, is what I understood. So I would like confirmation on that.
Spencer?
Yes, that is correct, Council President Hensley. We will not take ownership of that light until after the completed transfer of Ivy Street. Right now, the only light that the city currently owns is at Hazeldale in Sequoia.
Okay, thank you.
And Ivy.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we all good? We know
Everybody came.
we know what we own and don't own right now? Yes, Councilor Davis, what would you like to do?
I would like to make a motion.
Oh, well, fabulous. Let's go with it.
I move to approve ordinance number 1662, an ordinance authorizing the interim city administrator to execute a contract with Canby Excavating, Inc. in the amount of $3,479,492 for the South Walnut Street Extension Project, declaring an emergency, moving to a second reading on February the 18th, 2026. Second.
Motion is made by Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Waterman to approve ordinance number 1662, an ordinance authorizing the interim city administrator to execute a contract with Canby Excavating Incorporated in the amount of $3,479,492 for the South Walnut Street Extension Project, declaring an emergency to a second reading on February 18th, 2026. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Anyone opposed? That carries
Thank you.
5-0. Thank you both.
Thank you
Appreciate it
very
very much.
Thank you.
I just add a piece to, I know we do a lot of paving projects in our city, and I know Canby Excavating does an amazing job on a lot of the projects that they do get to do here in our city, and so I'm really thankful that they are, I know we've got, usually in projects we have to take the low bidder, but it's nice to see that Canby X, at least it's a local company that we get to plug and play here for this, so this is really good. So I'm excited for them to have that project, so thank you guys. Okay. Next up is a public hearing for this evening. Our public hearing is to approve order number 26-03, in order granting a modification extension for the noise variance application to Trammell Crow Company to allow completion of the concrete pour and site work between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 10 p.m. on February 2nd through April 1st, 2026. At 2121 Southeast Township Road. And I think, so that's our hearing for this evening. So I will open up with, so the matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. This public hearing was noticed, and those who wish to speak were instructed to contact the city recorder. At this time, I don't think we've received any to speak on the issue. Those people that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand, either here in the council chambers or virtually online. We have those, thank you. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may quote unquote buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. There will be a staff report, which Mr. Hardy will provide.
Questions, if any, by the hearing body. Then I will open up the public hearing for testimony. So proponents will have 3 minutes, and then opponents may have 3 minutes. I will then close the public hearing. And then again, any further questions by the hearing body, and then a discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure of the hearing? All right, seeing none. Mr. Hardy, floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is really essentially a renewal of the noise variance that you all heard on November 5th and 2025. And this is essentially the same operational elements are in play here. I did want to give some background. Trammell Crow and Perlo Construction, the folks on the ground, are here as well tonight to speak more specifically to the issues. Randy reached out to several neighborhood representatives that were here last time during the hearing, and I will go through that briefly in terms of the commentary there. I'm going to try to keep this at a high level, and I'll let those folks that want to speak, both from Trammell Crow and the neighborhood, speak on this as well. I think the essential elements here that Trammell Crow has provided, and this is in the staff report, is they have been adhering to the 5:30 mobilization time and 6 a.m. start time, which is a concern of one of the neighbors, that they maintain that. They have been doing that. They've been doing noise monitoring during concrete pours. They also have received access permit from Molino, which is allowing them to come in that entryway, which is away from the neighbors and not closer to the neighbors. And they're trying to, I think, do the things that they're trying to do to minimize noise out there. They've focused on that. Like I mentioned, there's 2 neighbors that Randy reached out to. We identified that as resident A and resident B. And again, the one concern was on the 5:30 a.m. that be mobilization and not start time. They were fairly clear about that they did not want them doing construction at 5:30, but mobilization, I think, was okay. And then the other resident said they were doing a really good job, and they've lived up to their end of the bargain. They said it's super quiet, not extended the light poles, lights are low, noise is low. They've been doing an awesome job. And this other resident verified with his neighbors that he hasn't received any complaints either. So with that in mind, staff is recommending approval for this. We do recognize that there may be opportunities for us to come back up here and speak more to this, but I'm going to leave that to both the applicant team to come up and speak, as well as the neighbors that may have concerns around this. Happy to answer any questions.
Don, have we, other than Randy's call down, have we had any complaints come in at all?
No, we have not.
Okay.
No.
Right. Any questions for Don here at all? Councilor Patton?
Yeah, I just want to confirm with the other one that we did, did we say mobilization at 5, or did we say work start at 5?
I think the spirit of that was mobilization, but, and I think Trammell Crow read that as the spirit. And even though the order, I think, was 5:30, I don't think it was absolutely clear on that, but they kept with the spirit of that and have maintained that. And we have written commentary from Trammell Crow on that.
Okay.
Councilor Davis?
Yeah, so just clarification, that was mobilization at 5:30, start work at 6.
6, yes, yeah. Any other questions?
No, did Representative from Trammell Crow want to add any input at all? You guys weren't planning on being called up here, were you?
Well, it's just further echoing what Don already said. I mean, obviously we know the concerns around the noise, so we're trying to do everything right and proper and upfront. We have taken some readings from various locations from the streets surrounding the project, and all of those readings during the construction work are coming in around 50 decibels. We talked last time we met, about 85 decibel concerns. The only times we're seeing that are when large trucks unrelated to construction are driving by and stopping. So those readings are all coming in really well. And then we've just recently, as Don mentioned, got that approved permit for the Malino Road County right-of-way work. And so we cut in a new entrance that's much further from any of the residents. There was one councilman last time who mentioned the possibility of constructing berms around the project. We looked into it. It wasn't quite feasible for the extent, but we did have some stockpile rock. So we did try to stockpile that rock in a way on the north end to help with that as much as we could. So we feel we're doing as much as we can to help, and we feel we're not causing any further issue to our knowledge and are being a good neighbor.
Appreciate it very much. Great. Anything else, gentlemen?
No, Taylor did a great job.
Good deal. All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing here. Any other, Councilor Patton, do you have another question?
Yeah, I was just curious, is April 1, because we're doing this extension, do they feel that they will have this done by April 1, or do they think they're going to need to be coming back with another extension?
That's a great question. April 1 is our ideal date, but if we want to limit the times of coming back, if we want to be certain, I would say June would be a very reasonable date. But I don't know the concerns with pushing for longer. It really ultimately is weather dependent. The first time that we came through and we had the requested date, that was when we were assuming we were going to get the full. So there's been quite a few times where we couldn't pour, where we thought we would be able to because we didn't have that extra time. So April's doable, but it's aggressive and completely weather dependent. So I think June would be, without doubt, we would be in the clear. Somewhere in between, if that's a concern, would be more reasonable. So I don't know if that walked around in circles your question, but okay.
It seems to me, yeah, obviously, it's been a very rare February and January where you've had the weather to work, and if it stays that way, yeah, that would make sense, but all of a sudden, March and April could get soggy.
Flurries, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Council President Hensley and then Councilor Davis.
Have the residents been talked to about the idea of it going until June, or are they thinking we're only going to approve this until April?
That is a good question.
April.
Okay.
So we
Then I'm not for going to June without having to talk to those citizens as well. I know it takes another meeting to extend it from April to June, but I want as much conversation and transparency as possible. So I would not be for extending it to June at this time if they haven't been talked to about that.
Okay. Appreciate that input. Council President Davis, or sorry, Councilor Davis.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I will open up the public hearing. So I know we don't have necessarily a proponent or opponent. We have a middle of the road. So Barbara, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you and everyone for the patience for our longer intro this evening.
That's all right. I wanted to thank also the construction company for sticking to their plan and sticking to their word. Unlike maybe some of our southern neighbors that, work outside of what the agreements were, they hold the line, and so I appreciate that. And truly, there's no noise until like 6 a.m. Then you hear some beep, beep, beeps, but they're absolutely following the plan. So I appreciate that, and I think our neighbors do too. So I've walked through the neighborhood and talked to our neighbors that border the Malala Forest Road or as a circle around, and no one has any complaints as far as noise goes. They all are also in agreement that they really feel strongly about the work not starting till 6 a.m. like you know, the arrival and the setup at 5:30, but keeping what they have right now online. They're feeling pretty strongly about that, but don't have any issues.
So the question was posed, or the ask from the construction company was, you know, not necessarily April, but possibly even going out to June. Is that, do you have initial thoughts on that?
I think that our neighbors would want to have a voice before that's decided.
No, and that's,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask that question. So,
Yeah,
okay.
and that's it.
All right, thank you very
so
much. Appreciate it. I have no other cards or opponents of any kind, so I will close the public hearing. Anything else, Don, or from the gentleman there from Trammell Crow and cohort there? No?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. Council, any other questions and discussion?
I would just like to make a motion to approve an order granting a modification or extension of noise variance of application to Trammell Crow Company to allow completion of concrete pours and site work between the hours of 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. on February 2nd through April 1st, 2026 at 2121 Southeast Township Road.
Second.
Motion has been made by Counselor Davis and seconded by made by Counselor Stearns, seconded by Counselor Davis. Wow, I'm batting 1,000 today. Sorry, Counselor Patton, did you have a question?
It can wait until you're done and we get into discussion.
Okay. So the motion's been made to approve an order granting a modification or extension of noise variance application to Trammell Crow Company to allow completion of concrete pours and site work between the hours of 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. on February 2nd through April 1st, 2026 at 2121 Southeast Township Road. Discussion, Councilor Patton.
Yes, I would just like to thank Trammell Crow for, it sounds like from the neighbors, and I have been asking if we have been hearing anything from them, and there had been nothing up to this point. So in here, pardon me, in hearing what was said tonight, you know, I really want to thank you for sticking to your word. I know that I was a bit harsh when this initially came through, but I know that those folks in that neighborhood have had some trouble. And so I wanted to make sure that they were duly represented and they would not have even more trouble than they currently have. So thank you very much for that. And also for the folks in that neighborhood, thank you very much for staying engaged and active with this whole thing. It is helpful to know that things are plugging along on course, rather than at the last minute hearing that everything is going south and we have a huge problem. So I appreciate everybody on both ends of this for their lines of communication and sticking to their words. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patton. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. That extension and modification is granted, 5-0. Thank you for coming and staying engaged. Thank you, gentlemen, for your hard work and sticking to the plan. We really do appreciate it, so thank you. All right, we're going to move into item 7, other business, which I don't think we have any tonight. Randy, yes, no?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Well, then we'll go into item 8, City Administrator Business and Staff Report.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I defer to any questions that you might have. We kind of got through our agenda pretty well tonight. I did have a couple brief items. Teresa, were you going to help me on posting one? So as you know, staff does not testify in Salem without council approval on certain bills. And this is just FYI only. This has kind of been put on the back burner for now. But Senator Christine Drazen is on this committee. And so she's reviewing this legislation, but the League of Oregon Cities and other cities are supporting reducing the match for smaller cities under 20,000 for grant projects from 40% down to 7% match. So obviously the small cities are excited about that. Now, I ran this through to staff because Senator Drazen is on the committee, just making sure we're not stepping into something. So this is like just FYI, and as legislation comes to our office for support, I'll always bring that to this body because you guys are all connected to the legislature, the legislators, the process. So this was the first one, so I just thought I'd share that really quickly.
Teresa, can you scroll? Thank you.
Yeah.
Come.
That's from the mayor. You go down a little lower. The mayor of Veneta.
Okay.
So there's, I have about 6 of these letters, different cities, Estacada, other communities that are
signing on in support.
Okay.
Council, we're in a very short session, and is there thoughts on drafting a similar letter or signing on in support? Obviously, we are still under that 20,000 threshold for the time being, but yeah.
Does this affect or relate to like the water plant, et cetera, if we're looking for funding for that?
You can scroll to the second one. There is a bucket, and I apologize, I don't have it with me, of the different types of eligible. I wish I had brought the League of Oregon City staff, but there's a bucket of different programs for infrastructure, major infrastructure, like streets, the money we get from the state gas tax, and the way it's split, how is it, Mayor? It's 60-40, state gets 60, cities get 40, something like.
On the gas tax?
Yeah.
50, 30, 20.
50, 30, 20, thank you. Yep. So this is separate from that, though. This kind of requires our local, this is our own local match that we would be putting towards any grant capital projects that we were able to get. And so the city of Florence, for example, here is submitted an example of how reducing from 40 to 7% really helps get them over the top when making a project for roads, water, and essential infrastructure.
So I guess that was my question. Are we assuming we're going out for any grants for the water project?
Yeah, that's more direct.
Then,
Yeah.
No,
Have
go
you
for it,
talked to
sir.
Canby Utility?
What's a small city?
Why not?
20,000.
Sorry to answer Councilor Waterman's question.
Yeah. They are, in fact, planning for several different types of financing. In fact, I've talked to the mayor about scheduling a joint meeting with Canby Utility out in the future, perhaps in April, where you can get on the floor with, down there with the Canby Utility Board and talk about their upcoming water project. As Councilor Stearns referenced earlier tonight, their new number is 100 million more than their other number. I mean, unofficially, I don't know specifics yet, but that's a big number, and they're going to be looking at things like WIFIA loans from the federal government, federal support, and of course, they do have an application right now through Representative Bunch to try and get, which the mayor and I learned about with meeting with Representative Bunch last week, to try and get some money from the state to help with their engineering and kick this off. So the answer is yes.
Yes, it sounds like it would be a very worthy thing to.
Could be, very much so.
Yeah.
And then to answer your question, I think it's, 20,000 for cities under 20,000 in population. So we still make that cut.
So do we have to stop the urban growth expansion until we?
No.
Until this goes?
I don't think so, no. This will, okay. This is not handled here in the next like 2 weeks, then maybe it makes it to the long session, I don't know. Councilor Patton, comment, question?
Yeah, so I guess just to Councilor Stearns' point, from what I could tell of reading the rundown of this legislation, it just creates different brackets for smaller cities. So like, it's like incorporated cities with a population not greater than 5,000 may be required to provide matching funds not greater than 3% for amounts under $100,000, 5% for amounts greater than $100,000. And then it creates a breakout for cities that have populations between 5 and 7,500 citizens, and then 7,500 to 10,000, and then 10,000 to 20. And so it kind of breaks it out so there's different brackets. Okay. So it makes it a little more attainable for people with a lower population count within their cities. So I was just going to throw that out there, which I think makes total sense. I did not get a chance in the header of this. It has all the sponsors of this bill, and I did not get a chance to look up each one of those people. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this is getting fairly bipartisan support within the legislature. Is that a correct understanding of this?
That's what I've seen and heard, yes.
Okay, so I guess for me, I do not see this as a middle finger letter to the governor or anybody else in government, and so I would be totally for supporting this thing.
Okay, I'm kind of sensing consensus that might be the case. I guess my question then to the council is, do we want, would we like city staff to draft something, and then do we want it to come from our interim city manager, or do we want it to come from us as the council?
I'm comfortable with the mayor signing it.
Mayor, yeah, it's your job.
Okay.
SA, right, yes.
Agreed.
Okay. Council President Hensley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The work session and public hearing has already been held. I'm noticing that the city of Florence actually erroneously labels this a House bill. It's a Senate bill. And they already held the public hearing, so testimony at this time is done in that chamber. So if we want to do something, we have to send it to the House committee when it's assigned. Also, while we're talking really quickly about legislation, I have a number, about a half a dozen or so bills that Trent rattled off in the C4 meeting that I will be following up on to see where we are, if we can have a voice in those if we want to. And I can report on that next week. But this is 35 days of chaos. Everything moves so fast. So there are a lot of deadlines that have already passed. But I will be able to give you a fuller report at our next meeting.
Great. Thank you, Councilor.
I can put an agenda item like legislative update or something for next week that you guys can look at it.
That could be good, yeah.
I'll be in Salem tomorrow.
Mayor, obviously you help me with the agenda, so.
Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow about the agenda and fix it, not fix it, sorry, that's the wrong term, but massage it.
Yes.
But yeah, if the council's comfortable, if we can get, at least then when we find out, or we can, you know, send it into the House packet for them for at least get our support on there. So, yes.
Is it possible for you to get that letter signed tomorrow when you're meeting with Randy?
I don't know how quickly staff can put that together, but as soon as they can, I will sign it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all, I appreciate that.
Another, do we have the agenda in front of us for tonight first, before I move on, I want to thank the leadership team that's here. Todd Wood is here. He's our interim public works director, so he's helping us through the transition. Mr. Pete Wood is here, HR director. We have a first batch of public works director resumes that are in. We're reviewing. Obviously, it's a huge hire, so we'll keep you posted as we move through that process. Denise LaRue, finance director, is here. We meet tomorrow to kick off our internal budget meetings and discussions, and we are looking to set aside some time. I'm going to talk to you, Mayor, tomorrow, agenda-wise, where we can have a work session, half-day-ish, on just budget, high level, based on the 2 presentations you've seen already this year. We want to make sure staff is calibrating towards your council goals that you've already established for the next couple of years. So and any new priorities that have emerged most recently. So that's being kicked off. Jamie Stickle, I don't know if she's still here, but she's helping me with the, is she? Yeah, there she is. With the procedural steps to close out the urban renewal agency, get the money, tax increment going to all of the tax jurisdictions and send the letter to the county. So we're working with legal counsel on that. Did I forget anybody? Don, you always see Don. So pretty good representation of the team. Spencer's been doing great at Public Works, helping out with a lot of our projects that we have up in the air. And Neil's here for Walnut. So I appreciate the staff staying late on a council night, and just wanted to share everything they've been up to.
Thank you.
I do have one item that is on here called process for review of legal services. So I think every single one of you have asked me, when can we have a conversation with the firm? And so I have notes from the firm because the firm has a 5 a.m. flight tomorrow morning, so couldn't be here. So she's asked me to kind of articulate procedurally what it looks like to have that conversation. So first and foremost, they are a firm, they're not a person. So executive session doesn't apply in their estimation. So what the recommendation is you can talk in open session with the firm, or we can go 3 by 3. And the mayor does not vote, so he could join both conversations, as I believe. So you can meet with the firm that way. So those are two real crisp choices. If the council has any other ideas, I'm agnostic on this, of course, because I don't report, I report directly to you, and so does the firm. So I'm just presenting you with next step options to make sure that conversation takes place. And I'm sure many of you have questions about that and ideas, but those were the two options that were kind of put forth. You'd want to be real careful in public, obviously, because there's attorney-client privilege on a lot of discussion items, but you can meet without forming a quorum and then bring back performance or conversations to the full body. I know I said a lot there in 2 minutes, but that's...
You're well caffeinated tonight. That's good.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at.
Councilor Stearns, first finger up.
I think, so there's no way we can do this in an executive session?
No.
Because a lot of the subject matter that I think needs to be discussed. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to do it. I mean, I don't have anything opposed to being public session other than the fact that if we want to have any particular reference to something that is in executive session, then all of a sudden, there goes the privilege and all that stuff.
I'll walk that back. The firm did say that if it is the overwhelming desire to do this in executive session, then it would be worthwhile to consult OGEC just to ask before we did it. Oregon Government Ethics Commission. Yeah. And I can certainly do that for you if that's the preference tonight.
Councilor Patton.
Yeah, so I am not a fan of this 3 by 3 thing. It seems shady, and then we run the risk of if one other person talks to another person, now we got a serial meeting and all that fun jazz. So, I think we either do it in open session or we do it talk to ODEC or whatever and see if it can be done in some sort of executive session. But I am just not a fan of doing this 3 on 3 side conversation thing. It just looks shady.
Okay, thank you, sir. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know about it looking shady so much as there is obviously the opportunity for people to slip up and make a mistake and end up in a serial meeting by accident. Also, I would prefer Randy go in and talk to ODEC and see if we can do this in executive session. Honestly, I'm just over everything being so dramatic, and I would like to just get this done. And I'm not trying to hide anything from the public, but it's just like, we've been airing so much dramatic stuff that I think the public is fatigued. I've heard reports from constituents that they're fatigued. They don't even want to watch our meetings anymore because they're fatigued. So let's just get this done in the most simple way possible and within the rules.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I've got two that feel, let's maybe consensus-wise have Randy reach out to ODEC and find out if that's a worthwhile venture, and then if not, then we can figure out something different. Councilor Waterman?
Yeah, I think just, following up to find out what we can or can't do, that's the most prudent thing. Okay. And then also, if we have to do public session, then, we can talk, we'll just have to talk performance without talking other details. And so, are you doing a good job? Yes, no. It's a performance review as well. So we just have to be careful.
Well stated. Yes, Councilor Stearns.
I mean, the purpose of this is to give feedback to, our employee, the firm, or whatever you call it, non-employee, whatever it is, the firm. Mm-hmm. And in order to give good feedback, they kind of have to know what we're talking about. And if we say, that one thing that you did that we didn't like that thing, it kind of vague like that, it makes it really hard to be effective at giving feedback. It's not just to give a grade or a, thumbs up or thumbs down. It's to basically say, hey, maybe you should do this different, or maybe you should, have something like that. But it's hard to do that in a public session without being clear. And then if it's not clear what their feedback is, then what's the whole point?
Well, and that's kind of been my talking points and argument from day one about this conversation. We're here Randy and I trying to meet this ask, and this is what, I think was anticipated that we would run into. Mm-hmm. So we'll go to, thank you, Randy, for offering to talk to ODEC. We'll ask ODEC, and we'll go from there. If not, then
sounds good.
We have a different dialogue. So, okay, Golden.
Thank you.
All right. Randy, anything else for you?
That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Seeing no other business except to adjourn, well, we should do action review, Teresa, since you haven't really said anything. Oh, sorry. Yes.
I just wanted, Jamie, did you want to mention the grand opening of the bike path?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hello.
I'm Jamie Stigall, Economic Development Director, and next Wednesday, before the City Council meeting at 5 p.m., we're going to have a grand opening of the Logging Bridge pathway to Highway 99. And so the location will actually be up on the Logging Bridge on the south side of town. Millar's S Point Tires has said that if people park in that parking lot, then they would be more than okay with that. So there's parking nearby. And we're going to have some speakers to talk about the project. We're going to have the Canby Area Chamber of Commerce on board or on hand to do a ribbon cutting. The community is welcome. We'll have some light refreshments, and we hope that all of you, as well as the community and our local business community, are able to join us so that we can celebrate this pathway, which helps to move people around Canby better. And this project was one of the final projects of the Urban Renewal Agency. And so it was a long time coming and discussed for a very long time on the ways that we could make that work with the funding that we had available. And it's a project that if you've driven past it or walked past it, it looks absolutely incredible. They've done a wonderful job, and I'm glad to see it completed, and I'm very excited to celebrate it with a grand opening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Patton.
Yeah, I just want to double check the Parks Board people. I know it was an urban renewal project, but we're tied to one of our parks. The Parks Board people are invited to this. Have they been specifically invited to this as well?
I have not sent it out to them. I have an email started, but I got pulled into a meeting this afternoon. So I have an email started that will go out to all city staff and all of our boards and committees. Obviously, parks is very important, and the logging trail is one of our beloved Canby parks, but making sure that Bike and Pedestrian Committee are invited, Traffic Safety Committee, those two will also see the impacts of this project. But if Transit wants to join or one of the other boards and committees, Planning Commission, we try and send all of our grand opening invites to all of the boards and committees as well as our city staff. And then it is on our City of Canby, Oregon Facebook page as an event, and we'll continue to push information through those channels. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else? No, you're good. Okay. Teresa, we haven't heard much from you this evening, so action review.
All right. You approved ordinance number 1662 to a second reading on February 18th, 2026, and declaring an emergency. You also approved order 2603, extending for the modification of the noise variance to Tremble Crow. There was a consensus to have the mayor sign a letter of support for Senate Bill 1585, and also consensus to have the city administrator contact OGEC in regard to an executive session for reviewing legal service.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. I will now take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved. All right. Moved by, how do I?
Everyone.
Yep. Stern, seconded by Councilor Waterman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Good night, Canby. Councilor Patton, Councilor Hensley, feel better.